Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and an honor to stand before you today as we delve into a profound and timeless truth that God's plans for us are always greater than our dreams. We often imagine the future, we set goals, we envision our aspirations, but what we fail to realize is that we are but limited beings, bound by our understanding of what can be. Yet, God, in His infinite wisdom and love, has designed a plan for each of us that far exceeds anything we could have ever hoped for or imagined. His plans are not only greater than our dreams, they are divinely crafted to ensure that we live a life of purpose, fulfillment, and eternal significance. We tend to dream based on the constraints of our experiences, our education, our current resources, and our limited vision. But God, the creator of the universe, who sees beyond the horizon, operates outside the confines of time and space. His vision for us is boundless, unshakable, and complete. It is within His plans that we find our true purpose. Today we will explore why God's plans are superior to our dreams, why it is essential to surrender our own limited visions to His higher calling, and how we can align our lives with the greatness He has prepared for us. The limitations of our dreams. Our dreams are often rooted in our own experiences, desires, and observations. From the moment we are born, we begin to learn about the world, form relationships, and acquire knowledge. This foundation, although valuable, is limited in its scope. Our dreams, while sometimes grand, are shaped by what we have seen and experienced. It is a human tendency to set goals based on the available knowledge and resources around us. However, this often confines us to a narrow perspective. The truth is that our dreams are constrained by the limitations of our understanding. We do not know the future, and we cannot see the full picture of our lives. Our education, upbringing, and environment shape the way we dream, but these factors alone cannot give us a clear vision of the purpose God has for us. We often make decisions based on what seems attainable, on what feels possible, and what we think is within our reach. Yet, God's plans are not restricted by what we know, what we have, or what we can see. God's understanding of us goes far beyond the boundaries of our experiences. He knows the end from the beginning. While we might be dreaming of a particular career or a certain lifestyle, God may have an entirely different path in mind for us, one that we might not even recognize as being better. His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. The beauty of this reality is that even though our dreams may seem noble or worthy, God is able to take us beyond what we could ever achieve on our own. As humans, we often set our sights on goals that we believe will bring us fulfillment or success. These dreams might include attaining wealth, reaching high status, or even gaining approval from others. But as we seek to fulfill our dreams, we may eventually realize that the very things we once thought would bring us joy fail to satisfy us in the long term. It is at this moment that God's plans begin to reveal their superior nature. What He has prepared for us is not only more significant, but it is also more lasting. When we place our dreams in God's hands and allow Him to shape them, He expands our understanding. What we once thought we wanted may pale in comparison to the greater calling He has for us. Surrendering our limited dreams opens us to the boundless possibilities He has in store, And when we allow His purpose to unfold, we see that His plans are always greater than what we could have dreamed for ourselves. The power of God's vision for our lives. God's vision for our lives is not based on what we can see today, but on what He has already ordained for our future. His perspective is eternal, and He sees beyond our present circumstances. Our dreams are often influenced by what is immediately in front of us, our job, relationships, finances, and health. But God's vision for our lives transcends these temporary factors. His plan is designed to ensure that we fulfill our purpose, and it takes into account not just what we want, but what we are meant to contribute to the world and to the kingdom of God. When we align ourselves with God's vision, we begin to realize that His plans are far more expansive than we could ever imagine. His purpose is not confined to personal achievements or earthly success. God's ultimate vision is to see His glory manifest through our lives. And that glory is revealed as we submit to His will. His plans involve the building of His kingdom, the fulfillment of His promises, and the restoration of the world. We are called to be vessels through which His vision is made manifest on earth. The power of God's vision lies in its capacity to transform not just our individual lives, but the lives of those around us. When we dream according to God's purpose, we tap into a vision that is both personal and collective. Our success becomes intertwined with the success of others, and we find ourselves participating in something much greater than ourselves. His plan is always bigger than just us. It is about fulfilling His will for all of creation. God's vision also provides the strength and wisdom we need to overcome obstacles. When we encounter difficulties on our journey, it is His vision that gives us hope and direction. Our dreams, while valuable, often fall short when challenges arise. But when we hold fast to God's vision for our lives, we find that His plans enable us to endure trials and emerge victorious. His vision equips us with everything we need to fulfill our calling, no matter how impossible it may seem. In following God's vision, we also experience a deep sense of peace. When we surrender our personal ambitions to His greater plan, we are freed from the burden of striving to achieve success on our own terms. God's vision brings us into alignment with His will, and in doing so, we discover the true meaning of fulfillment and joy. The peace that comes from trusting in His perfect plan is far greater than the temporary satisfaction we might gain from following our own dreams. Lastly, God's vision for our lives ensures that we are always moving towards something greater. Even when we face setbacks or disappointments, we can trust that His vision will ultimately lead us to a place of purpose and greatness. His plan is not just for the here and now, but for eternity. When we embrace His vision, we are invited to participate in something that lasts forever, an eternal purpose that is anchored in His love. The role of faith in embracing God's plans. Faith is the key to unlocking the greatness of God's plans for our lives. Without faith, we are limited by our own understanding and experiences. Faith allows us to see beyond the limitations of our current reality and trust in the unseen. It is by faith that we surrender our own desires and submit ourselves to God's will. Without faith, we will continue to rely on our own limited dreams, not knowing that something greater is waiting for us. When we walk by faith, we allow God to guide our steps and direct our paths. Faith is the bridge between where we are now and where God wants to take us. It is through faith that we can step into the unknown and trust that He will lead us to the fulfillment of His perfect plan. Our dreams might feel secure because they are based on what we know, but God's plans require us to step out of our comfort zones and trust Him fully. The Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. When we have faith in God's plan for our lives, we are no longer bound by what we can see or what we can understand. We begin to trust in His ability to make a way where there seems to be no way. Faith allows us to believe that God will provide everything we need to accomplish His will, even when the circumstances around us appear bleak. Moreover, faith empowers us to overcome fear. Fear is the enemy of progress, and it often keeps us stuck in our own limited dreams. We fear failure, rejection, and the unknown. But faith in God's plans gives us the courage to face these fears and move forward. When we trust in God's sovereignty, we know that nothing can thwart His purpose for us. His plans are always greater, and His power is limitless. As we grow in faith, we learn to let go of our own plans and embrace His. Faith requires us to surrender our control and trust that God's will is always better than our own. This surrender is not easy, but it is necessary. The more we trust God, the more we align ourselves with His greater purpose. In doing so, we experience the peace that comes from knowing that His plans for us are far beyond anything we could ever dream. Faith is also a constant process. We must continually remind ourselves that God's plans are better than our own, especially when life doesn't unfold the way we expect. Trusting in His wisdom and love, we can rest assured that He is working all things together for our good. Our dreams may fade, but His plan remains steadfast and true. Faith is the anchor that keeps us grounded in the knowledge that God's purpose for us will always come to fruition in His perfect timing. The journey from personal dreams to divine purpose. The journey from personal dreams to divine purpose is not always straightforward. It often requires us to let go of the desires we once held dear in exchange for something greater. As we walk this journey, we are continually faced with choices that challenge our understanding of what is best for us. The temptation to pursue our own dreams, even when they are good, can be strong. However, the key to true fulfillment lies in recognizing that God's purpose for our lives far surpasses our limited vision. This transition from pursuing personal dreams to embracing divine purpose is often accompanied by a process of refinement. As we submit to God's will, we may face challenges that reveal the imperfections in our own hearts. God uses these moments of testing to purify our motives and shape us into the individuals He has called us to be. Embracing divine purpose means being willing to step into the unknown and trust that God knows what is best for us. We might not understand why certain doors are closed or why we are being led down a path that seems difficult, but we must trust that God is guiding us towards something better. His plans are always designed to bring us closer to Him and to fulfill His ultimate purpose for our lives. Along the way, we may encounter others who are also on a journey of discovering their divine purpose. These relationships can provide encouragement and support as we walk by faith. Just as we have dreams, others have dreams too. And God's plans for us often involve collaboration and mutual growth. When we align ourselves with God's will, we not only experience personal transformation, but we also contribute to the fulfillment of His broader kingdom purposes. The process of moving from personal dreams to divine purpose requires patience. It is easy to become impatient when we don't see immediate results, or when we feel as though we are not making progress. However, we must remember that God's timing is perfect. He knows when we are ready for the next step, and He will never lead us astray. By remaining faithful and trusting in His plan, we can rest assured that we are on the right path. As we surrender our personal dreams, we also gain a new perspective on success. Success in God's eyes is not measured by worldly standards, but by our obedience to His will. When we embrace His purpose for our lives, we begin to see that true success is found in fulfilling the unique calling He has placed on our hearts. The joy that comes from walking in divine purpose is greater than any achievement we could have attained on our own. The transformative power of surrender. The process of surrendering our dreams to God is a transformative one. Surrender requires us to let go of control and allow God to take the lead in our lives. It is not always easy, especially when our dreams seem so close to our hearts. However, surrendering our dreams to God is the key to unlocking the fullness of His plan for us. When we surrender, we acknowledge that we cannot achieve true success on our own. We admit that our understanding is limited and that God's wisdom is infinitely greater than ours. This act of surrender is a declaration of trust, a commitment to follow where He leads, even when we do not fully understand the journey ahead. Surrender allows us to experience God's peace because we are no longer trying to manipulate circumstances or force outcomes. In surrendering our dreams, we open ourselves to receive God's direction. The more we let go of our own plans, the more we make room for God's will to be done. It is through this surrender that we discover the true meaning of fulfillment. When we relinquish control, we are no longer burdened by the pressures of achieving our dreams on our own terms. Instead, we are able to rest in the assurance that God's plans are perfect. Surrender also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we are not the center of the universe and that our lives are meant to serve a greater purpose. As we humble ourselves before God, we align our desires with His, and this alignment brings us into harmony with His will. It is in this place of humility that we are able to receive God's blessings and favor. Moreover, surrender transforms the way we approach obstacles. Rather than seeing setbacks as failures, we begin to view them as opportunities for growth. Lastly, surrender brings freedom. It frees us from the pressure of achieving success on our own terms. It frees us from the burden of comparison and competition. When we surrender our dreams to God, we allow Him to take control, and in doing so, we find the peace and joy that come from knowing we are exactly where we are meant to be. Trusting in God's timing. One of the greatest challenges we face is trusting in God's timing. We live in a world that demands instant gratification, and we often want things to happen right away. When our dreams don't unfold according to our timeline, we may feel discouraged or anxious. However, trusting in God's timing is essential to fully embracing His plan for our lives. God's timing is always perfect. While we may not understand why certain things take longer than we expect, we can rest in the assurance that God is orchestrating everything according to His divine purpose. His timing is never late and it is never early. It is always just right. Trusting in His timing requires patience, faith, and the willingness to wait for the right moment. When we trust God's timing, we release ourselves from the pressure of rushing or forcing things to happen. We recognize that He is in control and that He knows exactly when the time is right for each step of our journey. This trust brings us peace, knowing that we do not have to strive or manipulate our circumstances to bring about our dreams. God will do it in His perfect time. Trusting in God's timing also means accepting that some things may not happen according to our plans. We may have a vision for our lives that does not align with God's plan, and we must be willing to adjust our expectations. However, when we trust His timing, we discover that His plans are always better than ours. What we thought we wanted may not be what is best for us, and God's timing ensures that we receive exactly what we need at the perfect moment. In trusting God's timing, we also grow in our ability to be content. The impatience we feel when we don't see immediate results is replaced by a deeper sense of trust in God's ability to lead us. We come to understand that the journey itself is just as important as the destination, and that the delays we encounter are often times of preparation and growth. Finally, trusting in God's timing helps us see the beauty of His plan. As we look back on our lives, we realize that the moments when things didn't unfold as expected were actually moments of great blessing. God's timing was at work in every part of our journey, and we can see how He was shaping us for the greatness He had in store. When we trust His timing, we find that every delay, every setback, and every detour was part of His perfect plan for our lives. The role of divine timing in realizing God's plans. The concept of divine timing is one that often eludes us as we look to achieve our dreams. We live in a world where everything happens at an accelerated pace, and we are conditioned to expect immediate results. However, divine timing operates on a completely different scale. It is the understanding that God's timing for every event in our lives is purposeful, intentional, and designed for our ultimate benefit. When we trust in God's perfect timing, we allow Him to orchestrate the events of our lives in a way that brings about the fulfillment of His greater plans. God's timing often challenges our own sense of urgency. We want things to happen now because we feel unfulfilled, anxious, or impatient. Yet God knows exactly when the right moment is for us to move, act, or receive blessings. In fact, many times, our impatience prevents us from stepping into the fullness of God's plans because we are not willing to wait for His perfect timing. However, when we learn to trust in His timing, we position ourselves to receive not just what we desire, but what God has determined is best for us. The beauty of divine timing lies in the way it aligns with the greater purpose God has for our lives. Often, what seems like a delay in our plans is really a process of preparation, molding, and refining. God's timing ensures that we are equipped for the path He has prepared for us. When we rush ahead of His plans, we may miss out on the lessons and growth that come through waiting. Divine timing brings everything into alignment with His will, ensuring that we receive what we need at the perfect moment to fulfill our purpose. In moments when things do not unfold the way we expect, it can be difficult to remain patient and trust that God is in control. It is easy to become frustrated or discouraged when our dreams seem delayed, but we must remember that God is never late. His plan is always on time, and His timing is always perfect. The waiting period is not wasted time. It is a time of preparation and growth, a time when we learn to depend on Him more fully and trust in His sovereign plan for our lives. When we submit to God's divine timing, we experience peace in knowing that we are not responsible for forcing things to happen. We can rest in the assurance that God will bring His plans to fruition in His perfect time. The more we trust in His timing, the more we learn to let go of our own agendas and expectations, and we begin to align our lives with His divine schedule. This alignment leads to a life of fulfillment, joy, and purpose, because we are walking in step with God's perfect will. Ultimately, divine timing reinforces the truth that God knows what is best for us. We may not understand the waiting periods or the delays, but by trusting in His timing, we open ourselves to receive the fullness of His purpose for our lives. His timing may seem slow to us, but it is always the right time for the greatness He has prepared. Living out God's greater purpose for our lives. Living out God's greater purpose is the culmination of everything we have discussed. It is the ultimate goal of surrendering our dreams, aligning our plans with His will, trusting in His timing, and allowing Him to transform us. Living out God's greater purpose for our lives means stepping into the fullness of what He has created us to be and using our lives for His glory. It is a life of impact, fulfillment, and eternal significance. When we live out God's greater purpose, we are no longer focused on achieving personal success or recognition. Our lives are dedicated to serving others, advancing God's kingdom, and fulfilling the unique calling He has placed on our hearts. This purpose is not always glamorous or easy, but it is always meaningful and rewarding. The more we align our lives with God's purpose, the more we discover that true fulfillment is found in living for something greater than ourselves. Living out God's greater purpose also involves embracing the challenges and obstacles that come along the way. We may encounter difficulties, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but when we know we are walking in God's purpose, we find the strength to overcome. Each challenge we face is an opportunity to grow in faith and trust in God's ability to bring His plans to fruition. Even in our struggles, we know that we are exactly where God wants us to be, and that His purpose is being worked out in us and through us. As we live out God's greater purpose, we also experience a deep sense of joy and fulfillment. This joy comes not from personal achievement, but from knowing that we are making an eternal impact. When we serve God and others, we find that our lives are richer and more meaningful. The satisfaction that comes from living according to God's plan is far greater than the fleeting pleasure of achieving our own dreams. Living out God's greater purpose also requires us to continually rely on His strength and guidance. We cannot fulfill His purpose on our own. It is only through His grace and empowerment that we can do what He has called us to do. As we walk in His purpose, we are constantly reminded of our dependence on Him and His power to accomplish great things through us. Ultimately, living out God's greater purpose is the most fulfilling life we can live. It is a life of significance, impact, and eternal reward. When we trust in God's plans and surrender our own dreams, we step into the fullness of what He has prepared for us. a life that brings glory to His name and blesses others along the way. It is in living out God's greater purpose that we find our true joy and experience the abundant life that He has promised us. Ladies and gentlemen, when we surrender our dreams to God and align ourselves with His divine purpose, we enter into a life of fulfillment and significance. His plans for us are always greater than our own. And when we trust in His timing, embrace His transformation, and live according to His will, we experience the greatness He has prepared for us. Let us not be bound by our limited understanding or desires, but let us step into the fullness of God's perfect plan, knowing that His ways are higher and His plans are always for our good.